Chapter 23 The Elf Empire. Half the happily ever after assembly armies are in hiding while the other elves stand guard over their kingdoms, Alex explained to the Trollblin army. Once we recruit the elf army, all the armies in hiding, as well as the ones left guarding the kingdoms, will unite and charge the grand army together. Wait for my signal, and then join us in the fairy kingdom. Any questions? The Trollblin army consisted of a little more than 800 out-of-shape trolls and goblins, many of whom had recently joined just out of boredom. They were seen in front of Alex in a wooden amphitheater that looked like a donut floating in the great Trollblin lake. Only one troll raised his hand with a question regarding Alex's explanation. Yes, you, with the bone through his nose, Connor called on him. What's your question? If we join the armies of the Happily Ever After Assembly, what's in it for us? The troll asked. The Trollblin soldiers started exchanging whispers with one another. Alex hadn't mentioned anything they would get in return for helping them. What do you mean? Connor asked. Could we hook you up with some sheep or maybe some solid ground? We want our freedom back, a goblin in the back row yelled. Yeah, we want the right to leave our kingdom, a troll in the front growled. The entire Trollblin army agreed. Freedom, 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 they chanted. Silence, Trollblins, Queen Trollbella demanded. The amphitheater went quiet. I am insulted. You want to leave the water world I had built for you, especially since we recently got our sea legs. A goblin in the center of the amphitheater leaned forward and vomited all over the troll standing in front of him. Well, most of us have gained our sea legs, Trollbella corrected herself. Connor rolled his eyes at their request for freedom. You were put here because you wouldn't stop enslaving people. My sister and I were enslaved, not once, but twice by you. Do you really expect us to grant you your freedom? Trollbella crossed her arms. I'll never understand why humans take being enslaved so personally, she said. What if my Trollblins promise to never enslave anyone again? We reconsider, Butterboy. Connor looked over at Alex. They didn't really have a choice. They needed the Trollblins. I guess, Connor said. Queen Trollbella happily clapped her hands. We'll give you a sacred Trollblin pinky swear, she said. Everyone, raise your right hand, and if you have one, point your pinky to the sky. Repeat after me. I, Queen Trollbella. I, Queen Trollbella, the Trollblin army repeated. No, Trollblins, you're supposed to say your own name, she said, and they quickly made the correction. I promise to never kidnap, imprison, enslave, or forcefully borrow any human without their permission for as long as I live. The Trollblins reluctantly repeated after her, word for word. Wonderful, Trollbella said. Good job, Trollblins. You may rest your pinkies. Is that good enough for you, Butterboy and Fairy Girl? The twins sighed. It'll have to do, Alex said. The goblin in the front row raised his hand. Yes, you, with the missing ear, Connor called on him. What would the signal be? The goblin yelled. Everyone turned to Alex and waited for the answer, including Connor. I'm not sure yet, Alex said, but don't worry, you'll know it when you see it. Trollbella raised an eyebrow at her. Has anyone ever told you you're a little too confident, she said. By the time the Trollblin army was up to date on Alex's strategy, the sun had set. Trollbella insisted they stay the night, and Alex and Connor were given a private area on the Troll Queen's floating fort to sleep on, which consisted of the wooden floor and a blanket. Alex was worried if she made beds appear with her wand, it would tip the whole fort over. Besides the water rocking them and Trollbella spying on them every 10 minutes, the twins had difficult time sleeping because of all the worries. Connor, are you awake? Alex whispered to her brother. Do you really have to ask? He said. What's on your mind? I was just thinking that the elf empire, she said. If the trolls wanted something in return for their help, I'm afraid the elves may ask for something in exchange too. They'll probably just want a bunch of shoes, Connor said. Aren't elves obsessed with shoes? Gosh, I hope it's that easy, Alex said. I have to think of something to the Empress wants so desperately she would be willing to give up her army for it. Good thing you're the next fairy godmother, Connor said, and gives you a lot of work with it. The next morning, the twins woke up with very sore backs from sleeping on the wooden floor. They said goodbye to Trollbella and climbed aboard Lester. He spread his wings and took off from the water and soared into the sky. They flew the northwest through the clouds toward the Elf Empire. The twins were reminded of their voyage on the Granny from up here. The world looked so peaceful and safe from above the clouds. They hoped that after meeting with the elves, they would be one step closer to making the world below the clouds just as peaceful. After a few hours of flying, they arrived in northwesternmost kingdom. "Look, Connor!" Alex exclaimed. "There it is! That's the Elf Empire!" "Whoa," Connor said. "Elves really do live in trees." The entire empire was inside an enormous tree the size of a mountain. As the twins grew closer, they saw thousands of homes built throughout the branches. Some were built on the trees like tree houses. Some homes swung on the branches like bird houses. Some were even built into the tree like squirrels' nests. The leaves were the size of the twins' bodies. It was as if they had shrunken and entered a miniature world. Lester carefully landed on a strong branch, and the twins climbed off him. They walked along the branch, which was like a street, to all the different homes, and towards the center of the tree they figured the Empress must live. "I really hope this giant tree doesn't have any giant bugs or birds," Connor said, and quivered at the idea. "Squawk!" Lester squawked, offended by the remark. "Not you, Lester. I'm talking about the giant crows and spiders," Connor said. "I don't want to become something's lunch." Lester suddenly looked terrified at the tree. He waddled much closer to twins for protection. "I don't think we need to worry about that," Alex said. "Look around. There's nothing here." The twins searched the branches below, above, and ahead, but didn't find anyone or anything. Every tree home was vacant. "They must have heard about the Grand Army and left," Connor said. Defeated, Alex took a seat on one of the smaller branches. "But where did they go?" she said. "How are we supposed to find them?" Connor looked around the tree while he thought of it. Well, a whole entire empire would have just uprooted and gone too far without someone noticing. He froze. Before he could finish his thought, another one had interrupted. "What is it?" Alex said. "Do you remember that time last year when you found me in the school library reading fairy tale books?" Connor asked her. "Maybe. Why?" "You said reading fairy tales was returning to our roots," Connor said. "Then you went on to tell me that certain species of birds and insects hide in their tree roots when their home is being threatened. What if elves are one of those species?" Alex got to her feet and started jumping up and down. "Connor, you're a genius," Alex said. "I bet the elves never left. I bet if we fly to the bottom of the tree, we'll find the elves hiding." Connor started jumping up and down with his sister. He never missed an opportunity to celebrate his own cleverness. "I'm so glad I remembered that," he said happily, "because I gotta tell you, most of the stuff you say goes in one ear and out the Crack! The twins had been jumping on a weak part of the branch and fell straight through it. To their surprise, the tree branch was hollow, and they landed on a long wooden slide. The slide traveled through the branch and coiled down the giant tree trunk. The twins screamed and tried to grab a hold of anything they could, but the slide was too slick, so they slid deeper and deeper into the bottom of the tree. The slide finally ended, and Alex and Connor piled on top of each other on the ground. The giant tree trunk was hollow, and they found themselves in a secret chamber at the tree's base. Alex and Connor looked up and could see the slide was one of many that spiraled upward into the different branches of the tree. They had fallen into an escape route. The twins were also startled to see that they were no longer alone. Thousands and thousands of elves were hiding at the bottom of the tree just like they had predicted, and they were just as surprised to see them. They were all short but very thin. Everything about them was pointed. They had pointed ears, pointed jaws, pointed shoes, and some even wore pointed cone hats. Their clothing was black and white and asymmetrical. They wore vests that buttoned sideways. Their pants and sleeves were different lengths. "What's up with their clothes?" Connor whispered to his sister. "Don't you remember the story of the shoemaker and the elves?" Alex whispered back. "Elves are horrible at making their own clothes." Upon their arrival, the twins were instantly circled by a dozen elf soldiers. They pointed their wooden crossbows at them, and Alex and Connor threw their hands up. "What are you doing in our empire?" one of the elf soldiers asked. "We don't mean any trouble," Connor said. "We come to speak to your empress," Alex said. The elves shoved their crossbows closer to them. "Who are you?" the soldier demanded. "I'm Connor Bailey, and this is my sister Alex," Connor whimpered. "My sister is a big deal. She's sort of the fairy godmother at the moment." "Connor! Oh, what else am I supposed to say? They're about to shoot us." "Liars!" the elf shouted. Alex reached for her wand, and with one swoosh, magically turned all their crossbows into bouquets of flowers. All the elves in the trees gasped and stepped back from her. "She's a witch! She's come to grind our bones for a potion! Seize her!" the elf ordered. The soldiers lunged toward them. The twins braced themselves. "Stop!" said a stern voice from the other side of the tree. All the elves quickly turned toward the direction they had come from. Across the secret chamber, a female elf sat on a throne made of leaves. "Guessing that's the Empress," Connor said under his breath. Empress Elvina was the largest elf in the room, and when she stood from her throne, she towered everyone, including the twins. She was like a queen bee in a hive. She had a pointed jaw, pointed ears, large brown eyebrows, and very long earlobes. Her dark hair was wrapped in two buns on each side of her head, and wore a large headdress made of branches that stretched high and wide above her. The Empress's gown was very tight and made entirely of sticks and twigs, as if they had been individually glued to her lean body. She looked like a walking tree. A fluffy but massive red squirrel was perched on the side of her throne like an overgrown dog. The Empress slowly toward the twins, and the elves parted as she moved through them. "If she says she's the fairy godmother, then let her prove it," the Empress challenged. She was exactly like Mother Goose had described, very beautiful on the outside, but the twins could tell there was much more behind her intimidating eyes. Alex didn't know what to do. She may have been a girl with a wand, but how was she going to convince the elves that she was legitimately acting as the fairy godmother? A loud squawking echoed from above them. The entire empire looked up and saw Lester sliding down into the base of the tree. He was flapping his wings madly, but was sliding too fast to stop. He flopped to the ground beside Alex and Connor, beak first. He greatly regretted his decision to follow the twins into the tree. "If we have a giant goose, does that help our case?" Connor asked with a nervous laugh. He meant it as a joke, but the Empress was taken by the large gander. "I recognize this bird," she said. "He belongs to Mother Goose." "Mother Goose is a friend of ours," Alex said. "She loaned us her goose so we could travel here safely to speak with you. I'm the fairy godmother's granddaughter, and since she's ill at the moment, I'm filling in for her." Empress Elvina's eyes darted back and forth between the twins. Perhaps they were telling the truth after all. "I hope you realize the fairy godmother means nothing here. The Happily Ever Assembly has no power or authority in my empire," she said. "Yes, we understand," Alex said. "We've come here to warn you about an army that has invaded our world and plans to start a war." "We've heard about this army," the Empress said. "That is why we have taken refuge inside our tree, and we will stay here until the army is gone." Connor took a step toward her. "But they won't go away unless we fight them together," he said. "The Happily Ever After Assembly needs the help of your army to defeat them. The fairies and humans can't do this alone." An angry murmur broke out among the elves. The twins could see how outraged the Empress was to hear this, but instead of getting angry, Elvina batted her eyelashes with a smile and came to her face. "Help," she said. "You want our help? Did everyone hear that? The fairies have sent children to ask us for help." Only a few of the elves laughed with her. The rest of the chamber glared at Alex and Connor. They weren't making any friends. "Look, Empress Tree Lady," Connor said, "we understand you're still upset that the elves weren't included in the Happily Ever After Assembly, but we don't work together. The Grand Army will destroy us all." "My dear boy," the Empress said, and all the amusement faded from her face. "Is that what they told you? That we were upset because we weren't invited to join the little fairy club? Well, if so, it appears they've rewritten history." Alex and Connor exchanged a concerned look. "Then what else are you mad about?" Connor asked. The Empress knew their ignorance wasn't their fault and decided to educate them. The elves were tormented by dragons during the Dragon Age just as much as any other race, she explained. Our ancestors helped the fairies defeat the dragons. Once the dragons were gone and the world entered the peaceful era of the Age of Magic, the fairies forgot everything we have done for them. They divided the world up among the surviving species. The humans were given several vast kingdoms, but the elves were given only a tiny, unlivable piece of land isolated from everyone else. We had been ostracized just as much as trolls and goblins, but for no reason other than not being human. The twins had never heard about this before. They always assumed the elves lived in the far northwest because they wanted to. When the elves objected that our assigned home, the fairies ignored us, and because the elves questioned them, we weren't invited to join the Happily Ever After assembly. Princess Elvina continued. The Northwest was full of predators and hunted elves and witches that picked our body parts for potions, but the elves had no choice but to live here. Our ancestors grew this giant tree and built this empire high in its branches, far away from the dangers, and we've been here ever since. Alex and Connor didn't know what to say. Could they apologize for something that happened so long ago? Well, you guys really screwed us over last year when you surrendered to the Enchantress, Connor said and folded his arms. So, I think we're even. Why would we expect to clean up a mess we didn't create? The Empress said. There is no difference between the Enchantress and this army. They're both your problems. The humans and fairies want to choose which issues the elves are involved in based on what's convenient for them. Alex interrupted her before the situation became worse. Your Majesty, every nation will always remember history differently, and that's just how it is, she said. We all live in the same world, and it won't do any good if we continue to play this game of who was the bigger jerk for eternity. Right now, more than ever, this world needs to stand united against a force that threatens us all. We weren't expecting you to cooperate just because we asked you to, so I'm willing to offer you something in return if you help us fight the Grand Army. And what is that? The Empress asked mockingly. Yeah, what is that? Connor asked, just as curious. Alex knew she was going to regret making this offer for the rest of her life, but they were running out of time. Once the army is destroyed with the help of the Alps, as the new fairy godmother, I will abolish the Happily Ever After assembly, she declared. The entire chamber was astonished to hear this come from her mouth. What? Connor shrieked. What did you just say? The Empress asked. You heard me, Alex said. The Happily Ever After assembly is unfair. It's exclusive, and it has proven to be inefficient in times of crisis. This world needs to march into the future together, so I am inviting you to help me build a fresh and more inclusive assembly. Join me in creating the Happily Forever After assembly. This was shocking news to everyone in this room, especially Alex. She had never dreamed of starting a new assembly to unite the fairy tale world, but she knew the idea would be the only way to get the Elf Empress's attention. The Empress turned even closer to the twins. The whole empire was on pins and needles, waiting to hear the answer. If the elves join this new assembly, I want to lead it, Empress Elvina said. You should have stuck with shoes, Alex, Connor said. He slapped his palm against his forehead. The new assembly won't have a leader, Alex said, but you can manage it with me. The assembly will look to the fairy godmother and the empress of the elves for guidance, and we will advise them together. Alex offered her hand to the empress. Elvina sneered down at it. She had never trusted a human before, but she knew Alex was a woman of her word. Empress Elvina shook Alex's hand, and the deal was made. There was no going back now. My army is at your disposal, fairy godmother, the empress said with a small bow. Terrific, Alex said. She looked over at her brother, who sighed with as much relief as she did. Now that the elves were on their side, they could actually win this war. Now, I want the elf army to follow me into the fairy kingdom immediately, Alex said. I'll signal the other armies throughout the kingdoms to join us, and we'll strike the grand army before they. A deafening noise filled the giant tree as it was hit with a cannonball that blew apart the tree trunk to bits. The twins and the elves hit the ground, and sunlight filled the dark chamber, pouring in from the enormous hole that had just been created. They were too late. The Grand Army had started their attack. Another thunderous sound erupted as another cannonball hit the tree, followed by another and another. "What's happening?" the Elf Empress screamed. "It's the Grand Army!" Connor yelled. "They're here! The Elf Empire is under attack!" The elves started to panic and ran around the tree in hysterics. "Everyone remain calm," Elvina shouted. "I want everyone to climb to safety at once. Our army will stay behind and fight these invaders." Alex looked to her brother in a deer in the headlights. In a matter of seconds, their entire plan has gone astray. "Connor, what do we do now?" Alex said. "We need the elves to go with us so we can strike the army as a whole." "We have to get out of here and come up with a new plan then," Connor said. "If the army is attacking, I doubt the elves are the only ones they're targeting." "But the elves," Alex pleaded. "We need them if we want to win. We don't have a choice. We need to leave now." Connor grabbed Lester's reins and forced his sister into a large bird. He climbed on the goose's back himself, and they flew higher into the hollow tree. A cannon blasted a hole through the trunk near the top of Connor, steered Lester through it, and outside the giant tree. The twins could see 1,000 soldiers and hundreds of ogres surrounded the Elf Empire's tree. The soldiers redirected their cannons toward Lester, and the twins, as soon they were spotted emerging from the tree. The ogres grabbed boulders from the ground and threw them at the goose along with the cannonballs. Lester squawked in terror as he narrowly dodged the cannonballs and boulders jetting towards him. He flew as fast as he could away from the Elf Empire's tree. They created distraction as the Elf army began firing their crossbows at the soldiers from inside the tree. The citizens of the Elf Empire also began dropping giant acorns and twigs on the Grand Army from the branches above them. Just when the twins thought they had flown out of the cannon's range, a rogue cannonball bolted through the sky and blasted through Lester's right wing. The gunner squawked in pain, and he and the twins began rapidly descending toward the trees on the horizon. Lester flapped his left rein as hard as he could, but it wasn't enough to keep them in the sky. They crashed hard into the forest ground. The twins were thrown off Lester's back and into separate directions through the trees. Connor hit a tree and landed in a large shrub underneath it. Alice skid across a grassy field and heard a crunch underneath her. When she came to a stop, she reached for her wand, but it had snapped into several pieces in her pocket. Alex and Connor were too wounded to get to their feet. They had broken several bones in their bodies from the crash. They heard Lester squawk in the distance. He was perhaps even more pain than they were. They had heard the attack on the Elf Empire continuing in the distance, but there was nothing they could do. They looked at the trees around them, wondered where they had landed, but their vision faded away as they both slowly lost consciousness. The war had begun. Alright, that is the end of chapter 23. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more of the Land of Stories of Grimm and more books to come. And if you enjoy reading the video, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Also, if you have any recommendations for me to read later on in the future, don't forget to comment below on those recommendations for me so I can read them later on in the future. But overall, I hope you enjoyed the reading, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!